Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach David Bartke here.
It's Thursday, August the 3rd, 2017. Continuing our ongoing exploration of The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. We have finished 8 out of 10 chapters. We're on chapter 9 this week. It's called The Secret to You. David, I have to ask you first off, what's your secret?
Hey, Walt. My secret... Well, I thought I would tell a law of attraction story from a client.
Oh, okay.
And she was preparing to take the bar exam. And she really wanted it to go a certain way because, you know, there's all different parts to the exam. And so I did this process with her called segment intending, where she just intends in detail how she wants it to go. So she was saying things like, oh, I want to get there early, and I want the traffic to be flowing very easily, and I want to get a seat right by the door, and I want to finish the multiple choice question early. And she went through this whole list of things that she wanted, and we did the process a few times, and of course she practiced it on her own, and she took the bar this week. And I just spoke with her, and she was so excited because everything happened the way she segment intended it.
Wow, fantastic.
And I was like, so happy for her. And she was like, wow, this really works. I'm like, so it's just another example. And she got the seat by the door, and she did finish the multiple choice questions about 15 minutes early.
Oh, good for her.
And she did great on her essay questions, and she was intending that everything would just come to her mind quickly when she had to come up with her answers. And it all went exactly how she did her segment intending.
Now, of course, she had to know the subject matter. It's not like the law of attraction is going to give her the answers. Yes,
she did study, but still she had a little bit of, because it was unknown. Like, am I going to be too nervous where, like, I'm going to get, like, all flustered or whatever.
Right.
But
what
that's
we're
another
really
thing
talking about there is how do you stay calm under pressure, and that's what she was using the law of attraction for, to help her stay in a calm, balanced state.
Yes, that's the other thing that she was intending was to be calm. And the other thing that she loved about it, and I actually love about that particular process, is it kind of takes away the mystery of it, and which helps you feel more comfortable about whatever it is you're doing it on.
Sure.
Because it doesn't seem so unknown when you're pre-paving how you want it to go.
Right. Yeah. That makes a big difference. So very cool. All right. Well, let's get to the book, The Secret to You. And as usual, Rhonda starts off with some quotes from some of her presenters/gurus who were involved in the project and who appeared in the video and who are quoted in the book. Starting with Dr. John Hagelin, who says, when we look around us, even at our bodies, what we see is the tip of the iceberg. And Bob Proctor comes in next and says, think of this for a moment. Look at your hand. It looks solid, but it's really not. If you put it under a proper microscope, you'd see a mass of energy vibrating. And I have to put in a little gotcha here because Bob was being metaphorical. He wasn't being literal. There are no microscopes, visually based microscopes like electron microscopes that can visualize small material large enough to see down to the energy level. They haven't got that far. You can imply it through other methods of measuring. There are other forms of microscopes, if you will, that they can use to detect and measure energy at the energy level, but you can't see it. So he was kind of taking a bit of a liberty there, the way he said that. But nevertheless, the point is valid. The point is terribly valid that the entire universe is made of energy, and I mean that's Einsteinian in its comprehension. Now, Einstein was the one who taught us that that's the nature of the universe, and it is now a basic part of science. So he wasn't really wrong. He just was kind of wrong the way he said it.
Yeah.
So just a little caveat we throw in there. Next comes John Assaraf. And he says everything is made up of the exact same thing, whether it's your hand, the ocean, or a star. And that, of course, is energy. Dr. Ben Johnson says everything is energy, and let me help you to understand that just a little bit. There's the universe, our galaxy, and in the video they're actually showing each of these things zooming down. And then our planet, and then individuals, And then inside of the body are organ systems, and then cells, and then molecules, and then atoms, and then there's energy. So there are lots of levels to think about it, but everything in the universe ultimately is energy. That's a great concept, and we have Albert Einstein to thank for it, but more so we have the teachers of the law of attraction to help us understand how to use that energy. It's one thing to know that it exists, another thing to actually put it to use for ourselves.
Yes, and when they say energy, are they talking about vibration?
They're talking about a vibrating medium that behaves like traditional energy, and so they presume that it's energy.
Yeah.
So is it spiritual energy? Is it physical energy? What is it? Well, I don't think we know enough about it yet to be able to say for sure from a scientific perspective, but I think everyone in the scientific circles agree there is some kind of energy going on there.
Yes.
There doesn't seem to be any doubt about that. Nobody's saying, oh, no, all this energy stuff is a bunch of bull. No, it's true. So Rhonda writes, when I discovered The Secret, I wanted to know what science and physics understood in terms of this knowledge, and what I found was absolutely amazing. One of the most exciting things about living in this time is that the discoveries of quantum physics and new science, as she calls it, are in total harmony with the teachings of The Secret, and with what all the great teachers have known throughout history. She says, I never studied science or physics at school, and yet when I read complex books on quantum physics, I understood them perfectly because I wanted to understand them. That's an interesting point. That's kind of similar to what your client did. She wanted to understand the law. She wanted to understand what it's going to take to pass the bar exam. And she wanted to, with your help, to segment her experience of taking that exam in such a way that she would be ready for every single step along the way. She wanted it desperately.
Yes.
And that kept her focused right on what she needed to focus on. And in a positive way, not in a negative way, not in terms of, oh, God, I can never get that.
Right. Which, of course, you could do, and then you'd have that result.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we do the show is to remind everybody, nope, that's the wrong path.
Exactly.
And she also ties into various metaphysical concepts as well, finishing off this first section by saying a quote from Charles Hennell, who back over 100 years ago said, the universal mind is not only intelligence, but it is substance. And this substance is the attractive force which brings electrons together by the law of attraction so they form atoms. I guess he didn't say this more than 100 years ago. I must have his time frame wrong.
Yeah.
The atoms, in turn, are brought together by the same law and form molecules. Molecules take objective forms, and so we find that the law is the creative force behind every manifestation, not only of atoms, but of worlds, of the universe, of everything of which the imagination can form any conception. And Bob Proctor jumps in and says something that's kind of catches your attention and kind of starts to bring the whole question of science and metaphysics together. He says, to become conscious of this power is to become a live wire. He says the universe is the live wire. It carries power sufficient to meet every situation in the life of every individual. When the individual mind touches the universal mind, it receives all its power. And in fact, he says at a different point in the book and in the movie that there is enough power in the human body to light a city for a month.
Wow.
Now, I have to say, I've never really investigated where that's coming from, but what I suspect he's really referring to is the potential energy at the submolecular level. And if there was a way to turn that submolecular energy into actual kinetic energy that we could send through the wires, there would be enough to power a city for a month.
So the next time there's a blackout in my house, I can just go to my electric box.
The only problem is no one has figured out how to turn that kinetic energy, that potential energy, into kinetic energy. He's saying the potential is there. It doesn't mean that there's an actual, transceiver that will connect it over into the city. No, it doesn't work that way yet.
Well,
one day,
perhaps. Cool if you
but...
could do that. That would be cool if you could do that. Like just touch the electrical box, and all your power in your house will go back on as long as you're touching it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be the end of blackouts.
That's right.
The only blackout at that point would be that you're unconscious. So when we're talking about that kind of energy, we're not saying that all of these, the practical aspects of the problem have been resolved and that we are now all capable of, fueling our own electrical needs for the next month and telling the electric company to go away. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that based on what scientists have discovered and based on what the metaphysical side of what the gurus teach, we can conclude that there is an energy substance to the universe and that energy substance becomes the thing that our thoughts act upon in order to attract what we want to attract into our lives, simply by focusing on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the essence of The Secret in a nutshell.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important, too, not to put limits on what we think we can have. Because if that's true, what they're saying, then anything is possible. We could manifest anything.
Yeah, really the hardest part is convincing ourselves to trust that the big things can happen.
Yes.
Most of us can kind of convince ourselves to try, finding a quick parking place nearby. Because there's such low risk associated with that. But the moment that we start talking about something that would actually be transformative, that's where we start to get scared.
That's right. It's like Esther Hicks with Abraham says, are you focusing... It's just as easy to attract and manifest a button or a castle, but are you focusing on the button or the castle? And most people are focusing on the button because they don't think they can have the castle.
Now, interesting thing along this same line that we're talking about. I saw an article, I want to say within the last month. I can't remember for sure when I saw it. I can't even tell you where I saw it. Unfortunately, I didn't make a note of it at the time. I wish I had, but I didn't. But the article basically took the premise that the law of attraction is a bunch of BS. And it said, in essence, it would be wonderful if we could just, with our minds, influence the universal energy and get it to produce whatever it is we want to produce in our lives. But the article claimed, in reality, that's not the way reality works. And you know what my first reaction was when I read that? My first reaction was, well, for you it's true, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, whoever wrote that article, that's what they're experiencing. That's what they're thinking.
Yeah, that's precisely what they're going to experience. The moment that they adopt that viewpoint is the moment that it becomes true. And this isn't backhanded. It's literally true for that person.
Yes.
It isn't like we're saying that just to give them a little quick slap. That's not it.
Right. No, the law of attraction is a law. It's solid. It's not like maybe. If that's what they're putting out vibrationally, that's what they're going to experience.
They're automatically putting a limit in place that will not be removed as long as they maintain their viewpoint. And that's the key thing to understand. That's what you were referring to a few moments ago. You were saying that it all what this whole concept of energy, universal energy, teaches us is that the only limit is our own imaginations.
Yep.
Which we've heard since we were kids, even before we heard about the law of attraction. We've all heard that the only thing that limits us in our lives is our imaginations. So it's actually part of popular culture.
Yes, and the opposite is true, too. A lot of people grow up in homes where, the parents have a lot of limits, so they kind of inherit that way of thinking without even realizing it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we pass along limitations to our children, to children in our communities who aren't even our children, to, I mean, we just do it effortlessly, and we do it without limit. It just goes on and on and on. And it's amazing how often it happens. One of the things that I like to focus on a lot here, and I know you do too, is positivity and avoiding negativity. And we've observed on numerous occasions just how prevalent negativity is in our society. When we're saying that negativity is prevalent, what we're saying is people are putting limitations all over the place.
Yes.
Those limitations are what are holding everyone back. They're holding themselves back. They're holding people who follow them.
They won't even dare to think about things beyond what they think they could have.
Right. And it's everybody who buys into it. It's not just the person who's saying them. It's everybody who's listening and saying, yeah, and nodding their heads. Anytime that you're nodding your head at something negative, you are affirming the negativity in your own life. Every time you are applauding somebody, I saw this I'm a sports fan in a very limited way. I like the hated Yankees because I grew up with them, and I'm a UConn fan because I live in Connecticut. And I was reading a Yankees blog in which there was a fan who was basically talking about one of the Yankee players in a backhanded fashion. It was he intended it to be teasing, you know.
Right.
He's like, you know, and he was trying to sell it as if, well, it's a friendly kind of teasing, you know. And I wrote back to him, no, you don't understand. Not only is focusing on negativity, even while you're pretending that it's positive, still focusing on negative, but you're attracting that into your own life. You're not just impacting that player or other fans. You're impacting yourself in ways that you don't even understand. In fact, I think if you did understand, you wouldn't do it anymore.
That's right. That's right.
But, you know, that's just one little tiny example, and I'm sure we could all find millions of them just from our own lives because we run into them every day, all the time. But people actually, the people, especially in popular culture, enjoy focusing on negativity. They enjoy focusing on negative situations.
And that's what most people chat about with their friends and coworkers, and they're talking about, complaining about, and it's just, how about doing the opposite, you know? Share with everybody what you want.
Well, it's an advanced concept.
How you want things to go.
And that's what we should be doing. That's what we should all be doing. It's also an explanation as to why those of us who try to do it more consistently find ourselves failing at times. Because we are very influenced by our culture. So one of the big challenges, and I kind of talk about this one a lot from a variety of different angles, one of the big challenges is to learn to be consistent, to learn to stay consistently on the positive side. I had plenty of opportunities with that this week. I can't say I passed them all.
Right.
What I can say is that I focused, whenever I noticed that I was focusing wrongly, and by wrongly I mean focusing on negative stuff.
Yes.
I have become very attuned now, very quickly, to how the negative stuff comes back to me. I am really aware of it now. I was actually experiencing a full day of it on, I think it was Wednesday of last week.
Right.
And on that Wednesday, it was just, I was in the midst of negative things. I was feeling negative. I was feeling slightly angry about stuff going on, and I could actually feel myself attracting more instances, more situations to feel angry about, so I could continue to feel angry.
Wow! And then how did you get yourself out of that into a better place?
I walked away. Literally, I got up and went out and took a walk to just get out of that room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because once I recognized that was going on in a big way, I knew I had to break the cycle. And I didn't have any great, you know, guru ideas on, I think I'll meditate on, you know, this particular thing because that always works for me. No, I just got out of there. I just walked away from it.
The important thing is you took action to change the vibration.
And quickly, I might add. I wanted to get out of it.
Yes.
I didn't like that place. And it's not like I had any magic answer because I didn't. I didn't have any. I could not, when I was in that space, for that moment in time, I could not think how it was to think positively. Yeah. But even so, you still. So I had to break it. I had to break the pattern.
Positive action.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even the positive action, just walking away, it's still positive. It is
the
key. Yeah. It's the key, and I guess that's the magic trick, really.
Well, it's the key. Like, you know, we're not robots, so of course sometimes we'll find ourselves in a more negative, lackful way of thinking. But the difference is, well, then are we taking action to improve it or not? And hopefully we are.
And that is true. That's exactly what we're hoping for. Now, as this chapter goes on, it really starts to get into the metaphysical. And one of the most challenging, if you will, aspects of the metaphysics, for me anyway, is the concept of one energy field and how many people equate that to one consciousness or one supreme mind. One creative source, one God, whatever you want to call it. And I have to tell you, for me, there's a little bit of a challenge in there. Because,
how so?
Well, I certainly buy into the idea that there's one energy field. But I also buy into the idea that we are individuals. We are individuals on the one hand, but we are all part of the same energy field. We come from the same energy field, but we are all distinct.
You mean like source energy?
Source energy, right, yeah. Source energy.
Yeah.
Because we're equating source energy, spiritual energy, if you want to call it that, with the physical energy field. We're saying that they are one and the same. The secret the book certainly makes that claim, and I support that one too. I presume you're kind of on the same wavelength on that one also.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've established that as our foundation, what is the spiritual side like? What, is there one supreme mind on that side? Is there God, if you will? And what is the nature of that God? That one gets a little bit sticky for me, because since we are all part of that source, but we are also unique individuals, we are both. It creates a conundrum. On the one hand, we're part of the whole. On the other part, we're distinct from the whole. That's a little bit mind-bending all by itself.
But then we're detached from it, though. Like we're individual energies that are all attached to the source.
Yeah, we're all. You can't detach, in fact. Which leads me to the whole question about a God, because most religions, I think all religions actually, project the idea of at least one God. Usually it's one. There are a few religions that have multiple gods, but the modern religions, let's call them that, focus on one God. And that one God, all the religions in one form or another, I'll express it the way Christians do, but really all of them do a kind of a similar thing. They all project the idea of people being what Christians call in sin, meaning turned away from God. Disconnected, if you will, from God. And that's where they start to lose me. Because you can never disconnect from source. You are always a part of source. So am I. We are always part of that one common energy.
Yes.
The whole idea of being able to turn away from it is, in my view, relatively akin to a 2-year-old covering his eyes and saying, "You can't see me."
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you heard of Iyanla Vanzant?
I know the name, but I have not listened to him, no.
She's a wonderful,
okay.
It's a she. She's a wonderful, inspirational speaker, and she goes around and helps people from a life coach point of view. And she said about source energy that when someone feels lonely or someone is in a state of anger or upset, then they've just forgotten that they're always connected to source. Because she would say, when you really feel that connection, you just kind of live life from a different point of view. Like, you're not angry, you don't feel lonely. You just handle things in a different way. And she was conveying that to this family. It was just so interesting because it's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, even that, I fully appreciate what she's saying, and I think I agree with her. But even that, I have a little bit of a problem with it. The idea that you can in some way turn away from it. You really can't. Just as the little kid can't be not seen by covering his eyes, so you can't ever really turn away from the source. Yeah. The most you can ever hope to do is to convince yourself that you're not connected. And even then, it's only going to be temporary, because eventually you're going to realize you're connected anyway.
Yes.
So again,
I kind of like what you said, that sometimes we forget that we are always connected. And those times we can get into this mode where we forget, and then we feel lonely and down and out and all that kind of thing.
Now, there do seem to be people, and she probably is one of them, who apparently, based on what they're saying, they can feel the difference between, quote, being connected and, unquote, and, quote, being disconnected, unquote.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I've ever detected a difference in feeling other than a difference of emotional feeling. It just emotionally doesn't feel so good. But the more that I've tried to focus on, what does it feel like to be connected? Well, at first I couldn't feel anything. I didn't know what I was feeling. Now I've thought about the whole concept long enough and explored it enough that I'm realizing there's a feeling that I have inside of me. And I'm not quite sure how to describe it. It's a continuity feeling. It's continuous.
Like when you feel that you are connected, you mean?
I feel it at all times.
Yeah.
I never not feel it. The most that I can do is ignore it. But the feeling is always there.
And what does it feel like?
The closest thing I can come to describing what it feels like is a light bulb. If a light bulb is on, it's continuously on. The light is just always on. So what does a light always on feel like? Well, it's always on. So what does that feel like? Well, it's always on. That's what it feels like. That's what source energy inside feels like to me. It's just always on. It's this continuous presence, if you will, within myself, except that it's not it's not an outside presence. It's not like it's a.
Right.
It's not like it's God inside me. It's not like it's some spirit who's taken over. Some evil spirit that's taken over my body. It's
That
me.
wouldn't be
It's,
evil.
yeah. It's me connected to source energy. It's the rest of me, if you will. One of the analogies I like to use to describe the whole thing about physicality versus spirituality is, especially along the New Jersey shore, but in other places too, on the shoreline they have these little walls with pictures on them and holes for hands and faces and so forth. And so you can go up and you can put your face in it and your hands in it and whatever, and your friends can take a picture of you and it looks like you're a person in a scene, doing a certain thing. That to me is my analogy of physical. What you see on the side that's got the pictures and so forth, that's the physical side of you. The rest of you is sticking out the back. That to me is how I understand physical and spiritual. The rest of me is in the spiritual part. And that's kind of what I'm feeling inside. I'm feeling the rest of me, so to speak, connected over on the other side of the field or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, to me, like, the best way I can explain it, how I can define it right now, is it kind of, for me, just feels like pure positive energy, like just pure positivity.
Yeah, it feels very positive, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? It feels good. It makes you feel safe.
Yes.
Yes. It's so constant, and it never goes away, and you can count on it.
Yes.
It never deceives you. That feeling never changes for the worse.
Yeah, like even when I just tell myself, I feel so connected to source energy. Like I can just feel like a positive kind of rush go through my body for a second.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling it right now. I'm feeling it as we're talking because I'm focusing on it, Well, yeah.
Yes.
It took me the longest time to realize that I'd always felt it, and that's what I was feeling. I always knew some experience was there. For the longest time, I didn't think it was spirit. For the longest time, I didn't think it was energy. It was just, it was a feeling. It was ephemeral. Except it wasn't ephemeral. It never went away. And that was my clue. It wasn't ephemeral. It didn't go away. It's always there. One of the things that makes life interesting from the point of view of many gurus is that we have the opportunity to choose between what we like and what we don't like, between positive and negative, between dark and light, and so on and so forth. And that it's the contrast that makes life interesting.
Yes.
If you take that a step further, what that implies is that if you have constancy, it's hard to discern it. Because in order to discern it, you have to see what its opposite is or what it's contrasted with or whatever. And this energy, this feeling inside, doesn't have a contrast. So no wonder we don't pay any attention to it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
just
the way I'm seeing
positive
it.
energy.
That's why it took me so long to recognize what it was, because I didn't have something to contrast it with. The closest I can come to contrasting it, like I said before, the closest I can come to describing what it's like to not be connected, which I really can't do, is I can focus on negative feeling, because negative feeling feels quite different from it. Positive feeling feels just like it. That feeling inside feels just like positive feeling. So when you're feeling good, it feels just like that thing inside. Whereas when you're not feeling good, when you're feeling negative in some way, it feels different from that thing inside. So that's the only way I can contrast it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I haven't heard many people talk about what source energy feels like within them. So I think it's good that we're talking about it.
I can't say I've heard anybody talk about it in depth.
Yeah.
Probably because, what do you talk about? How do you talk about
But I
this
think
thing?
that's what you talk about, is because a lot of people use it, source energy. You're always connected to source energy. But you're right. I haven't heard anybody say, well, what does that feel like when you feel that you're connected to source energy, when you are aware of that? And
which I think is one of the things missing from the way The Secret and Law of Attraction are often taught. They all talk about how you should be able to feel the connection. Well, I couldn't at first because I didn't know what to feel for. How do you know?
Yeah, like, what are you talking about?
And the best clues they can give you is, well, if you're feeling good, then you're connected.
Right.
Which didn't quite explain it. I mean, now that I have the understanding I've achieved so far, now it makes more sense to hear that. But at first, well,
Yeah.
I don't feel good all the
Yeah.
time. So what does
Yeah.
that mean? It went away?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that mean I
No,
lost
it's
my
true.
connection?
No, you're always connected.
Is it time to reboot?
So that's why, I think it's great that we're actually trying to define what that feels like.
What does it feel like to you? Have you ever looked at that, explored that?
Well, like I said before, to me, it just feels like pure positive energy. Like when I just have a feeling of excitement, and I don't even know what I'm excited about. That's kind of like how I feel. Like, I'm really connected in an aware way to source energy right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And it
Because when we're feeling that excitement level, where do we feel it? What's the location of it? It's in that
for
place.
me, it's kind of it's just kind of in my solar plexus, like in the middle of my stomach. I just feel this like exciting feeling of excitement, and it just feels like really good. Like there's like rainbows bursting all over my body, or something like that. I don't know.
No, I think that's a reasonable description.
That's how I would describe it, because I think it's great that we're trying to do that, because you're right. I haven't heard anyone say, well, this is kind of what it feels like for me.
Another thing that I have discovered in the course of exploring all this stuff is that there is a chunk of that. I don't know another way to describe it except to say a chunk. Maybe a better way would be to say an aspect. That's a little bit closer. Still doesn't feel quite right. There's a piece. No, aspect is closer. There's an aspect of that I had wrongly understood to be something wrong with me. For the longest time, I had, and still occasionally have, I can even feel it right now, for lack of a better term, I had a knot in my stomach. And I didn't really have a knot there, but that's the best way I can think of to describe it. And it would be uncomfortable. And it wouldn't go away. And I kept wondering, why do I have this? I got medical tests. I was diagnosed as having irritable bowel syndrome. I had all this stuff going on. It took me the longest time to realize that's actually my true source energy field. And when it's feeling bad, it's because I'm focusing on the negatives. It isn't that the field itself feels bad. It's that I'm layering a negative feeling on top of it. And I'm interpreting that as if the field is causing the negativity, which it's not.
So for someone who hasn't felt source energy, or they haven't think they have felt it, like, what would you say? Well, here's kind of when you know you're feeling it.
Well, the first thing that I would say is
connection to it.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is you actually do know what it feels like. You just have never made the association.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because everyone's felt excitement before, everyone's felt happy before, everyone's felt good before.
And it's easy to figure out what those feelings are because we know what the opposite feelings are. So those are easy to identify. It's the constant stuff, the stuff that always feels the same, that we very often learn to distrust. I think a lot of people distrust their own inner core without realizing they're distrusting their own inner core. You probably see that a lot in your practice, I would think.
Yeah, sometimes, yep. And sometimes people don't know, like, maybe they're excited for some reason that might scare them. Like, I don't have a reason to be excited right now. Why am I feeling excited? Like, and then no one's ever told them, but that's good. That's a good thing. It's okay. That's a good thing. Stay there.
Stay there, right.
Don't be afraid of it. It's good.
And it can take a while to get back to feeling good about it, especially if we have painted it with some sort of a negative association. Because now we have to undo what we painted on in the first place before we can actually say, oh, yeah, there it is. I can accept that. I can accept that as me. That's part of me. That's me extending into the beyond. In fact, Lisa Nichols has an interesting quote in this chapter. She says, we often get distracted with this thing called our body and our physical being, but that just holds your spirit, and your spirit is so big it fills a room. You are eternal life. You are God manifested in human form, made to perfection. Your spirit is so big it fills a room. That's an interesting concept.
Yes.
And by the way, that has a physics and a science concept to it as well. Believe it or not. I know it doesn't sound like it on the surface. It sounds like pure metaphysics. But there is actually a scientific aspect to that. I made allusion to this in the past, but I'll bring it up again. Scientists who study the nervous system have been able to track what happens from the moment you experience a thought of some kind to the moment that a thought of some kind about a part of your body, particularly a part where you're diseased or something like that.
Right.
And they can track from the moment you have that thought to the moment that the energy passing through the nervous system works its way to that part of the body and produces some kind of result, positive or negative, depending on what you're feeling. But the point is, they've been able to measure the speed limit of the nervous system.
Wow.
And the speed limit of the nervous system is pretty slow. If it's far enough away, nervous system-wise, so to speak, it can take 3 or 4 seconds for the signal to get there. And it really can't deliver the signal any faster than that. And
but
yet,
that's pretty fast, right?
It is in one sense, but it's also pretty slow in another sense. I mean, right now you're sitting probably at a desk or a table or something, and you're talking to me. I don't know if you're actually holding a phone or if you've got a microphone in front of you or if you've got a headset on or whatever. But the point is, you're sitting there, and if somebody were to put a cup of coffee onto the table next to you while you're talking to me, without a second thought, you could just reach over and grab it, and it wouldn't take 3.5 seconds. You see what I'm saying? And that's actually a pretty slow interaction. I mean, if you're an athlete, you can do interactions like that, in a blink of an eye. So here's the question. If it takes that long, if it takes 3 or 4 seconds to get from the brain where the thought is held to the part of the body that you're trying to influence, like, picking up the foot to start running, how do you take off in an instant? How do you get the process going before the nervous system has the opportunity to deliver the signal to that part of the body? Because we do it all the time.
Right.
We can instantly react to anything we want to. We don't have to think about it. It's not like, okay, I'm going to read the screen now. Okay, send out the signal to the eyes, turn the eyes on. Oh, now I can see the screen. It's not the way it works. The way it works is, I'm going to look, there it is. No time loss. It's instantaneous. So how does that happen? It blows the whole theory that the brain working through the nervous system is what's guiding the whole body, because it can't. It's not physically possible.
So then what is?
Well, that's the magic question, isn't it? It's the $1 million question. It's
You're
a question
supposed to
that.
know the answer.
Well, I know pieces of the answer. I don't know the whole answer.
Yeah.
But I do know researchers who have kind of thought about that question, including researchers who had very serious scientific careers, one of whom I've mentioned before. Her name is Dr. Candace Pert. She died just a few years ago, but she was a major researcher in the field of endocrines and nervous system interaction through peptides and so on and so forth. She was one of the discoverers of the major substances in the body, like dopamine and the various endocrines and the hormones and all. I mean, she played a major role in a lot of those discoveries in the 1970s and 1980s. She postulates that a large portion of that decision-making that I talked about, where you see something, you just grab it, you don't have to wait 3.5 seconds before your hand can get down there, a lot of that happens in the gaps between the nerves. Because those gaps are where they find those peptides that I mentioned. And the peptides, I don't remember the exact mechanism. It's been a while since I read the book. But those peptides actually produce a field that they can measure. And her suggestion is that field ties into this much larger field that gurus and Eastern philosophers and so forth tell us we all have, this aura field. And they can actually measure that aura field now. I mean, scientists are able to detect energy around us. So there is a field going on there. That, she projects, she suggests, is where the intentional thought processes take place. And through some method that we don't fully understand yet, that's how the signal is sent instantly from your mind to your hand to pick up the cup of coffee without waiting 3.5 seconds for the signal to get there.
Right.
So
I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, but I don't know.
So when Lisa Nichols says your spirit is so big it fills a room, that's what I think about.
Mm-hmm.
I think about that field that very likely is where our brain really is. The brain, as it turns out, may not actually be the center of thought. The center of thought may be this field around us. And because we, in a sense, exist in our brains, because that's where our eyes see from, that's where our ears hear from, so we are sort of associated with that being the center of where we are, in a sense. That kind of leads to the theory that the brain is what's guiding everything. But what if that's just the illusion of, having senses where they are? What if the brain is actually in a wider space? What if our spirit is so big it fills the room, and the spirit is where the brain actually exists, where the thought process actually exists?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what we talked about in the last show a little bit about the unseen. Like there's things going on that we can't see.
Right. Oh, yeah. Because science hasn't been able to detect more than just what we've described here. That's as far as Dr. Perk got with her career. Others, of course, are continuing the exploration, even though she's passed on to the next world. But we have the point is we have more to learn from a physical scientific perspective of how this whole thing works. Nevertheless, through what the metaphysical side of life has taught us, through the mystics and the psychics and the gurus and the religionists and so forth, they've told us for the longest time that there is more to us than just the physical, and that our spirits do fill a room, and our spirits are where everything happens. And it's looking more and more like the two realms are coming together, saying, they're both talking about the same thing.
Yes, there's that expression where we're spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Yes,
something
I
like
that. I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really describes it nicely, because spiritual beings having a physical experience eliminates a lot of really negative baggage. First of all, it eliminates the idea of an all-seeing God who we all report to. Who we can sin against, and who hands out punishments and rewards, and all that just goes away.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work with the metaphor anymore.
But what do you think all this has to do with death? Because some people say, well, everyone's tombstone should really just say "to be continued," because even though the physical is dying, the spiritual just continues. So sometimes I think about that's interesting.
There are a lot of interesting ways to look at it, and I've talked to some very interesting people, including guests on the show, who had some fascinating insights on what the other side is like, because that's really what we're asking. What is the other side like? And on the one hand, we could argue that none of us really know. On the other hand, we could listen to people who have told us that they think they do know and what they have to say about it. One of my favorites is a guy who I had on my first year of doing the podcast. I did it twice, and then I've had him back since then, about a year and a half ago, something like that. His name is David Bennett. I think I told you about him. David is the one who had 2 near-death experiences, and in those near-death experiences, he accumulated a lot of what we would have to describe as subjective experience about what the other side is like. And from the way he describes it, it's very similar to what I've heard from other people who claim to have some sort of insight to the whole thing, which is that death is not actually much of an experience in terms of anything traumatic or anything like that. The only trauma happens leading up to before you die.
Right.
But
do they
the actual
talk
death
about
experience is
afterwards?
it's almost like you just woke up.
Right.
One moment you're in physical form, the next moment you're not. You continued throughout that entire process. You didn't blink out and blink back in.
Right.
You continued to be. So one thing that you see sometimes in the movies kind of, I think, perhaps describes it pretty nicely. You see a body, like we saw this in the movie Ghost. Remember that one, Whoopi Goldberg? Yeah. And one of the characters would die, and then all of a sudden, like, a ghost of that person would get up from the body and look at his body like, whoa, what happened here? That to me is the best visual presentation I've ever seen of what it's probably like to die.
But I always wonder, how the mediums that can talk to people that have passed on, and they're like the Long Island Medium has that TV show. Have you ever seen her?
Oh, yeah.
And, like, you know, she's like, your uncle's coming through, and he wants you to know thank you for the ring you got him.
Yeah, right.
And the person, oh, my God, I did get him a ring. Like where is that person? Where is she getting her information from? Is it just messages she's getting, or...
My wife loves that show. She loves watching Teresa.
Yeah,
Teresa herself has actually described what her process is on the show, but in a nutshell, she's getting images. She's getting pictures. And she has learned to treat certain pictures as being symbolic in certain ways. And she'll even say that during some of these readings. So if she sees a certain picture of such and such, it means so-and-so to her. And she's got this catalog, if you will. So it's like a language she's learned in a sense.
Right.
A picture-based language that tells her what people are trying to tell. So
if we continue, though, then, like, are you continuing as Walt Thiessen? Like, as I understand, like, and for how long, and then what happens? And, like, there's so many unknown questions.
Well, it's an interesting question. What is Walt Thiessen? And part of the answer for me is another understanding that I achieved just recently, which is where the subconscious mind lives. And believe it or not, this is part of my answer to your question, so bear with me.
Okay.
But where does the subconscious mind live? I mean, since Freud first postulated the idea of the subconscious mind, it's a question that people in psychology circles have debated and discussed and never come to a real conclusion on. But I recently read another work by a researcher who suggested that the subconscious mind is actually stored in the body. That all of the aspects of the subconscious are actually manifested physically in the body. So when you die, you're essentially leaving your subconscious mind behind.
And that's what maybe like some of these, like Teresa's tuning into that, maybe?
Possibly. I think what she's tuning into is the conscious mind, which is what we were just describing earlier as the mind that fills the room, the spirit.
Right.
I think what happens is when we die, we leave the body behind, so we leave the subconscious mind, and all that's left is the conscious. And the conscious, ideally, is where we're storing the memories that we acquired in life. So the memories persist, but they don't persist on a subconscious level anymore.
Right.
Because the subconscious got left behind with the body.
And then I wonder, like, if there is reincarnation, do we take from a previous lifetime any fear, worry, and doubt into the new lifetime? Like, from like a law of attraction point of view, like, do we come in already with a certain amount of fear, worry, and doubt, or not?
Well, I've often asked myself a more basic question, a fundamental one, which is, do I want to come back?
Right.
Sometimes I say to myself, hell no, I don't want to have anything to do with this place. And yet other times I realize there's so much beauty here. I mean, that was one of the great Abraham Hicks answers one time. What is it? Why is it that people would want to come back to a place like this? Why would people want to be born? Why would they want to go through all the trials and tribulations that we go through? Why would we want to go through and live in all the negativity and deal with all that junk? Why would we want to do that? And the answer is because we get to smell the coffee. We get to see the blue of the sky. We get to love the sound of the baby laughing. We get to enjoy all the physical senses in a way that you can't really enjoy when you're just on the spiritual side. You need to have that physical connection in order to fully appreciate the whole experience. So why do we come back? I think that's why we come back, to keep experiencing that. This is all about what you said earlier. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. Why have a physical experience? Because it's enjoyable to feel and to experience the sensory side of physical existence.
Yes.
So, of course, we keep coming back. Now, the real question in my mind is that mentally healthy? I'm not 100% sure on that one. But
I think it goes, again, from a law of attraction point of view, then, are we allowing ourselves to have fun and enjoy, like all the things you were talking about, or are we blocking ourselves from doing that?
And that's the choice we have every single day. That's what gives us the ability to become LOA masters.
Yes, actually, I always end my coaching sessions, a certain way. And one of the things I always ask someone is, what are you going to be doing in the next few days to have some fun?
Yeah.
Because I always want to remind people, like, hello, that's like one of the reasons why we're here. Like, we want to enjoy.
Which, by the way, is identical to feeling gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
LOA gurus love to talk about how important it is to feel grateful about stuff in your life. Well, feeling grateful about stuff in your life is another way of saying appreciating the experience of your senses.
Mm-hmm. But just allowing yourself to have fun is just like a high vibration experience.
It is a high vibration experience. It's where we enjoy this stuff so much.
I don't have anything fun planned in the next few days.
You know?
And I'm like, well, what can you think of? It doesn't have to be something, major. Like, you could watch a movie you enjoy, or have dinner with a friend you enjoy being with. Like, just something. Like, it's always important to remember to do something fun.
Well, major doesn't really have anything to do with it, does it? What it has to do with is it enjoyable?
Yes.
Do you like it?
But some people connotate that with, like, oh, something fun. I have to do something big to be fun. Like, no, you don't have to. You can just do something enjoyable at home.
Not that there's anything wrong with doing something big to have fun. That's great.
It's all good, yeah.
Yeah, it's just you don't have to limit yourself to that.
Right. So it's always good to remind ourselves, like, what fun thing are we going to have planned? Do something fun. Like, as you're saying, part of the reason why we're here is we wanted to experience that. We wanted to experience joy and happiness and laughter.
And not just what's going to happen, what's happening right now. Because literally we can't live in the future. But we can live in what's going on right now. We can't even live in the past. We often try to. Many of us try to become experts at living in the past. But we really can't live in the past. We can only really live right now. So what's going on right now that you can enjoy? What's going on right now that you can feel good about? What's going on right now that is a sensory experience worth experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that if there's something going on sensory-wise that you don't like, that you have to focus on it. It just means there's almost certainly something else going on that you could focus on instead. That's why when I was having that really bad day, what did I do? I walked away because I wanted to focus on something different.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I wanted to focus on something that felt better. I didn't even know what it was going to be. But I knew if I just walked out the door, something was going to grab my attention and say, "Oh, that looks nice."
Yes. Yes.
That's sparkly. That's what we're looking for, right? The little sparkly things to catch our attention.
Yeah, sparkly things are good.
Well, the first step is what? Notice that they are there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you have to wait for them. It's not like they're going to show up tomorrow, but they're not here today. They're here today. You just have to be willing to look for them.
There's always something you can find. Yeah, there's always something you can find to appreciate.
Right. Yeah. That's the art form. That's what I talked about, how it's the person who knows how to focus on that stuff. That's who becomes the master. Well, that's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You master it moment by moment. You don't master it tomorrow.
Right.
What a crazy concept. I will master this tomorrow. What's the phrase Joel used to use? That yesterday's beyond our control and tomorrow wasn't promised. And it's true.
So it's all about now.
It's all about now.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're here. We're spiritual beings, have a physical experience. What's cool right now?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things, actually. There's a lot of cool stuff that goes on moment by moment, if you're willing to see it.
Yep.
You got to be willing. You got to be willing to at least give it a shot and say, there's got to be something. Even if I can't see it right now, it's got to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to take some sort of action to break the spell of this negative junk I'm dealing on, so I don't focus on it anymore, so I can give myself the opportunity to see it, or to hear it, or to feel it, or to smell it, or to taste it.
Yes, yes. Just to recognize there's something in your environment you can focus on that you appreciate.
And if you can't even find a sense that feels good because all the senses are being deprived of you right now, you're only being fed negativity on every single sense wavelength, then feel inside.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, like we were talking about, that stays constant. That doesn't go away.
Yes.
So if you can't focus on anything else, go inside and focus on yourself. And guess what they call that, folks? That's what they call meditation.
I love meditating.
Isn't that what you do? You just focus within.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, what are you focusing on? You're focusing
But
on you.
I just focus on my breath.
You're focusing on you. That's all you're focusing on. You're focusing on who you are deep inside. That's it. That's it. That's everything.
Who are we deep inside? We can keep going. Who are we deep inside?
Yeah, we can
it goes back to
source
energy. It goes back to source energy.
It does go back to source energy. So going back to the question that we kind of raised very early in all this, the dichotomy between all of us being one and all of us being unique individuals. I personally think that it's actually a mistake to get hung up on one or the other. I think it's a mistake to get hung up on the idea we are all one consciousness. Oh, we are all one consciousness. We are all one being. Get out and live a little bit. Don't stay there. That's not where the fun is. Be more of an individual. Think more individually. And on the other side of the coin, if all you're thinking about is you, individual you, and nothing else, guess what? You've cut yourself off from all this great stuff that you could be realizing you're connected to already. You are connected to it. You are a part of it. You are a part and you are distinct. You are both. And what a cool gift that is.
Yeah.
It's great to be both. It's not like we now have to choose. You will choose between individuality or being part of the group consciousness. No, that's not the way it works. It's not one or the other. But that's the way people often treat it, don't they? They treat it as if it's you have to choose, and you must choose now.
Yeah, like for me, it's enough to know we're all connected to source energy, all of us.
And what's the other side of it?
It's just are we choosing to focus on that or not?
The other side of it is that we are individuals who get to choose what we're focusing on.
Yes.
We are both.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We are both, which is a wonderful thing. Hey, David, we got about 2.5 minutes left.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. There it is again, flying by as usual.
Yes.
But since we do have at least a couple minutes, let's do something we haven't done in the last few weeks. I want to tell everybody where they can find us. Now, many of you are listening to us right now here on PRN because that's our home station, if you would. We're there every Thursday, 7 p.m., but that's not the only place to catch us. And we mention that because we don't want you to feel like that's the only place to listen. And if you found us in another way, like you found us through our website, loatoday.net, great. You can listen to us there, too. You can actually connect to us on your iPhone or on your Android. You can subscribe to our podcast. There's a button right there on the site where you can do it. Or if you're on Facebook, you can find us on Facebook. We're in the Apple iTunes Store. We're on YouTube. We're actually all over the place. The point being, don't feel like you have to limit yourself to just listening to us at one particular time. We are available anytime you want us. And by subscribing to our podcast, you can get hours and hours and hours of stuff, much more than you'll ever listen to because you're doing too many fun things during your day. But, for those times where you just need some downtime and you want to have a nice positive thing to listen to, that's where the beauty is of listening to our podcast. So that's why I mentioned that. And David, tell them also about what you do because you're a life coach and you have a really cool practice and people can participate if they're interested.
Yes, I am actually an experienced and certified law of attraction life coach. And if you want to find out more about me, you can go to lifecoachdavid.com, lifecoachdavid.com. And I actually have a new feature now where if you want to experience a mini phone coaching session, there's a button right on the home page that says schedule your appointment here, and it takes you to a calendar, and any available time I have, you can just select, and then I will call you at that time.
Very cool. David, it's been a pleasure as usual.
Yes, same here, Walt.
We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.